It was late, close to midnight, when I passed by the half-open kitchen door, hoping to grab a glass of water. That's when I heard her whisper, sharp as broken glass. "Why is she still living here?" she hissed. "She's done her part. This isn't her home." She didn't know I was standing right there. But worse, my son didn't say a word in my defense. He just let the silence agree with her. I was never supposed to live here forever. Just a few months, I told them. Just until my back healed and I could get around without that ridiculous walker clacking along the hardwood like an old dog's nails. They offered, no, insisted. I move in. "We want you close, Mama," my son James had said, with his wife Clara nodding so earnestly behind him you'd think she meant it. "You shouldn't be alone after the surgery." And I believed them. At 73, I still had enough salt in my hair to know better. But love does strange things to a woman's judgment, especially when it comes to her only child. I gave up my condo, the one nestled near the beach with the pale blue shutters and bougainvillea growing wild down the railing. Rented it out to a nice couple from Colorado. Packed up my books, my quilting machine, my garden shears, and moved into their guest room. It was painted lavender, meant for their future baby girl. The crib was still in the corner, empty, waiting. They called it our home now. I called it temporary. I didn't ask for much, just a corner to read, my tea mug in the top cupboard, and my own laundry day. I made sure to stay out of the way. I cooked though they never asked. I folded their clothes and left fresh towels by their door. I vacuumed quietly, always after their Zoom meetings. I babysat Milo, their golden retriever, when they traveled. And I did it all without complaint, because that's what mothers do, isn't it? We give. I gave James everything I could. Helped pay for college with my pension. Gave him the down payment for this very house. And when Clara wanted to start her bakery business, I handed her my savings. No contract. No IOU. Just faith. That's what made that night so hard to unhear. Why is she still living here? It clung to my skin like sweat on a humid day. Stuck in my ears like sand. I didn't say anything. I crept back to the lavender room and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the closed crib. For the first time since moving in, I felt like a guest. An overstayed one. The next morning, Clara smiled at me like nothing had happened. "Good morning, Miriam. Want avocado toast?" She always offered me things she knew I didn't like. I politely declined, saying I had a leftover muffin. Truth was, I wasn't hungry. James came in after her. He kissed her cheek, tousled the dog's ears and muttered a tired, "Morning, Ma." I wanted to ask him if he heard her. But what if he had? And worse, what if he agreed? Instead, I smiled. "How's work?" "Busy. Always busy." "Busy, yes. Too busy for breakfast with me. Too busy for the puzzle we used to work on every Sunday. Too busy to notice that I hadn't left the lavender room in 2 days, except to put the dishes away or refill Clara's lemon water. Days turned into weeks. The soft kindness of those early months turned cold, like tea left out overnight. Clara stopped knocking before entering. Once, she moved my stack of books from the living room and left a candle there instead. "Minimalism," she said. One night, I overheard them again. I didn't mean to. Truly, I didn't go listening behind doors like some bitter old woman in a movie. But this time, I heard numbers. "Her name's still on the condo deed," Clara said, her voice tight. "We can't sell it unless she signs." "I know," James muttered. "But it's hers. I can't just—" "Come on, James," she cut in. "You said yourself she doesn't even need it. We're the ones drowning here. She lives rent-free, eats our food, and we still have to rent out her property just to make ends meet." Rent-free. Those words punched me harder than any fall I'd taken in my life. That was the night something inside me shifted. I sat up straight in the lavender room, turned on the soft lamp, and pulled out my ledger. I hadn't opened it in years. But inside it, in neat cursive, were all the things I'd given. Not to boast. Just to remember. $18,000 for James's student loans. $45,000 toward this house's down payment. $30,000 startup for Clara's bakery. $10,000 last year when their car broke down. I turned the page. The title to my condo. Still in my name. They forgot who I was. They saw only gray hair and soft slippers. A woman who made tea, not decisions. But I'd built a life. I'd built their lives. And now, they whispered in the dark about how to nudge me out of the picture. Politely, cleanly, like sweeping away crumbs. The next morning, I put on my walking shoes. Yes, the sturdy ones with the orthopedic soles, and left the house for the first time in weeks. I told them I had an appointment. I walked straight to the library. I didn't need a computer. Just a little quiet. There, I found a business card I'd kept from years ago. Naomi Finch. Estate planner. Kind eyes, smart mouth, tough as nails. I called her from the library's phone. Naomi? It's Miriam Rose. I think I'm finally ready. She didn't ask for what. She just said, come in tomorrow. And bring everything. And I did. The ledger. The condo papers. The bakery contract I'd never written, but now wanted to. I laid it all on Naomi's polished desk, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a burden. I felt like a woman taking back her power. That night, I came home to find my tea mug gone from the cupboard. In its place was a sticky note. Please keep personal items in your room. Thanks. Clara had signed it with a heart. And for once, I didn't cry. I just picked up the note, folded it gently, and placed it inside my ledger. Proof. Proof of how far kindness had carried me. And where it left me. Naomi looked at me the way you hope a friend will when the world starts tilting under your feet. Not with pity, but with quiet understanding. You don't need to explain everything, she said, sliding the cup of chamomile tea toward me. But let me guess. You've given more than you've gotten, and now they want the last piece of you. I blinked. You read my mind. She didn't smile. I've seen too many women like you, Miriam. Kind hearts make easy targets. But I'm here to make sure you don't end this story small. That sentence stuck to me. End this story small. No one ever told me that before. We got to work. Not just on paperwork, but on reclaiming me. The first step was drawing up a retroactive loan agreement for Clara's bakery gift. Naomi called it a promissory note, with interest adjusted to match inflation. It wasn't about the money. Not really. It was about acknowledgement. About value. About finally writing my name on something other than birthday cards and casseroles. We moved on to the condo. It was still mine after all, and the lease was set to expire in 6 weeks. You have every right to reclaim that space, Miriam, Naomi said, glancing over her glasses. You don't need to justify your choices to anyone. But they need the rent. And you need your dignity. Those words made something bloom in me. Not like spring flowers. No, this was something tougher. Stronger. A thistle growing through concrete. The day after our meeting, I came home with more confidence than I'd felt in years. Clara was reorganizing the pantry. She gave me a sideways glance when I walked in, like I'd forgotten to knock. Everything okay? She asked. You've been out a lot lately. I've been busy, I said simply, brushing past her to grab my tea leaves. Yes, from the cupboard. No sticky note was going to dictate where I kept my peppermint. James came home late that night. I heard him and Clara arguing upstairs, her voice sharp, his muted and tired. I didn't listen closely. I was done doing that. But when I passed by the trash, I noticed a bakery order form with big red letters at the top. Overdue payment notice. The business was crumbling. I didn't feel joy about that. I felt tired. That night, I wrote a letter. A kind one. but firm. In it, I outlined a repayment schedule for the $30,000 loan. I gave them 12 months. Interest-free. I didn't want revenge. Just respect. I left it in James's study, placed neatly beside the framed photo of us from his college graduation. The one where I'm holding his diploma because he said his hands were shaking too hard. He didn't bring it up for 3 days. When he did, his voice cracked. "Ma, why now?" I looked him straight in the eye. "Because if I don't ask for what I'm worth, no one will offer it freely." He sat down hard on the arm of the couch. "Clara said you were keeping tabs." I almost laughed. Keeping tabs. I opened my ledger and turned it toward him. "No, James. I was remembering. Because the world forgets women like me." He didn't speak for a while. Just stared at the page that had his name written so many times. Under college, wedding, first car, emergency surgery. When he finally spoke, his voice was a whisper. I didn't know it was so much. And that hurt too. Because he should have known. I moved forward with the condo reclaim process. The renters were lovely people. They understood. I planned to move back in once the lease ended. Clara was furious. "Where will your things go?" she snapped one morning, rattling her French press louder than necessary. "To my home," I said softly. "This is your home." "No," I said calmly. "This is your house. There's a difference." That week, Clara stopped talking to me altogether. James was caught in the middle, pacing between guilt and fatigue. But I didn't let it break me. I'd done that already. Once. I began quietly boxing up my belongings. Books. Quilts. My teacup. My photos. James helped. He didn't say much, but his hands lingered on old frames and recipe cards. One afternoon, he picked up the Afghan I knitted when he was born. Held it like it was the last thread of something decent. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly. I looked at him, this grown man who still had my eyes. "What for?" "For letting her speak about you that way. For not stopping it. For forgetting who raised me." I wanted to hug him. But I also wanted to leave. Not out of spite. Out of love, for myself. Naomi helped finalize my financial protections. I moved my remaining assets into a trust, updated my will, and added legal language that would ensure no one could sell my property without my say. I even appointed her as the executor. That part made me feel safe. My last day in their house was oddly quiet. Clara didn't come down for breakfast. James helped load the final boxes into the mover's van. Just before I stepped out, I turned to the lavender room and placed one last item on the crib, a small note, folded neatly. "Thank you for the room. I won't be back. But I hope you fill it with kindness before anything else." The air smelled different as I stepped through the door of my condo again. My house. My own space. It was faintly musty from being closed too long, and the curtains were pulled tight, dimming the light that used to spill freely across the hardwood floor. But under it all, there was something familiar. Something safe. I stood in the entryway for a long time, holding the keys tight in my palm, the metal warm from my hand. My name was still on the title, on the mailbox, etched onto the welcome plaque by the door, M. Rose. No one could take that away. The movers brought my things in quietly. Books found their old shelves. My rocking chair, the one James used to curl up beside as a child, was returned to the sunny corner near the window. I found my teacup and placed it carefully beside the kettle, then unpacked the jar of peppermint leaves, the scent blooming instantly, filling the kitchen with something soft and real. I walked room to room, touching walls like greeting old friends. When I stepped onto the balcony, I saw that the bougainvillea had grown wild in my absence, wrapping its arms around the railings in reckless, glorious pink. I whispered, "I'm home." It wasn't grandeur. It wasn't polished. But it was mine. That first night alone felt strange. After months of hearing Clara's heels on the floorboards and James typing late into the night, the silence was deep. But not heavy. I poured myself a cup of tea and sat in the rocking chair, letting the quiet hold me gently. I should have cried. But I didn't. I just breathed. The next day, Naomi came by. She brought flowers and a stack of papers to finalize the trust. "I can't believe you got it all done so quickly," she said, placing the bouquet on the counter. "You've been a whirlwind." I smiled. I think I was just waiting for permission. To do what? To matter again. She looked at me then, not like a lawyer, not even like a friend. Like a woman who'd seen too many stories like mine. "You always mattered, Miriam. But sometimes you need to remind people." We spent the morning going through everything. She made sure I had power of attorney assigned, healthcare directives in place, and clear disbursement plans for every asset. "When the time comes," she said, tapping the last folder closed, "you'll leave behind a legacy on your terms. Not theirs." The relief that washed over me was indescribable. In the days that followed, I began stitching again. Quilting helped quiet my mind. Every tug of thread through fabric felt like a little repair inside me. I stitched in the mornings, took walks by the beach in the afternoons, and cooked only for myself in the evenings. No more worrying about Clara's gluten-free needs or James's low-sodium preferences. I stopped checking my phone as often. Until one afternoon, when it buzzed non-stop. 5 missed calls. 3 from James. 2 from an unknown number. Then a text. "Ma, please call me. It's important." I stared at it for a long time. A part of me still wanted to jump. Still wanted to believe it was urgent. Life or death. Because once, long ago, I was the one they needed. But I didn't call back right away. Instead, I made tea. Sat with it on the balcony. Let the bougainvillea petals fall around me like confetti. Then, just before sunset, I called him back. His voice was rushed, like he'd been pacing. "Ma, thank God. I thought something happened." "I'm fine." A beat of silence. "Clara's bakery. It's failing. We're being sued by a supplier. And she says you're demanding money she doesn't have." "I'm not demanding anything," I said quietly. "I'm asking for acknowledgement. And accountability." He sighed. "I know. She's upset. Thinks you're trying to hurt us." "I'm protecting myself. That's not the same." He was quiet for a long time. "I miss you," he said finally. I closed my eyes. "I miss the boy you used to be." There it was. Truth. "I didn't raise you to be silent when someone you love is being disrespected," I added, voice calm. "You let her talk about me like I was unwanted." She was stressed. "No," I said, cutting him off gently. "She was cruel. And you let it happen." The next day, a letter arrived by courier. A formal apology from Clara. Handwritten. It was strange. Forced, maybe. But there. Inside it, folded neatly, was a check for the first installment of the repayment. I stared at it for a long time, then placed it in my drawer. Not because I needed it. Because it was a symbol that my silence wasn't owed. A week later, I met with Naomi again. "I want to make a donation," I told her. "To the shelter on Rosewood. The one with the young moms." She smiled. "From the bakery loan?" "From my strength," I said. She nodded. "Let's make it count." That night, I walked barefoot through my condo, lights low, windows open, and danced just a little to a song playing on the radio. Something old. Something with violins and memories. The world hadn't changed. But I had. And that was enough. They say you can die slowly in someone else's house. Not from illness or age, but from becoming invisible by degrees. In Clara and James's home, I had grown smaller each day. Not in size but in presence. First my teacup was removed. Then my books. Then my voice. I'd become a quiet utility, a warm body that cooked, folded, and smiled politely. But not anymore. Now, every square inch of this condo reminded me, I exist. I have weight. I take up space. It had been 4 weeks since I'd moved back in, and I was beginning to feel more than free. I felt whole. I started volunteering at the Rosewood shelter 2 mornings a week. The director, Letitia, was a kind-hearted woman in her 50s who wore too many scarves and never let anyone leave without a smile. The shelter housed young women, some barely out of high school, who had been discarded, used, or forgotten. I sat with them during sewing classes, told stories when they asked, and just listened when they didn't want to speak. One afternoon, a girl named Bree came to me crying. 17, baby on her hip, mascara running. She said I was just a guest, she wept. That I should be grateful. I blinked slowly. And you believed her? She nodded. I took her hand and said softly, then let me tell you a story about a woman who lived in a lavender room she wasn't allowed to decorate. We laughed through our tears. And in that moment, I realized, healing doesn't always come wrapped in revenge. Sometimes it comes in storytelling, in being heard. One morning, a letter arrived. A thick one. From James. Inside was a typed message, longer than I expected. He wrote about growing up watching me work double shifts at the library. How he remembered me patching his jeans with trembling fingers, even when I had arthritis so bad I couldn't open a jar. He said he didn't know how to defend me when Clara began to sour toward me, but that his silence had been cowardice, not agreement. He ended it with this, I thought loving someone meant protecting them from conflict. But now I realize loving someone sometimes means confronting the people they love. I failed you. I let you become invisible. I'm sorry, Mom. I see you now. I hope it's not too late. I folded the letter with trembling hands. And I didn't cry. Not from sadness. But from recognition. Clara never called. But I didn't expect her to. The bakery officially closed a month later. I read about it online, just a short post. Thank you for all your support. We're moving on to the next chapter. James started calling weekly. Just short chats, updates, stories about Milo the dog. There was hesitation in his voice sometimes, like a boy knocking on a door he once slammed. I kept my voice gentle, but never small. I began spending my mornings tending the wild bougainvillea, planting herbs in the little balcony pots, humming songs I hadn't sung in decades. The afternoons were for the shelter. The evenings for tea and crosswords, sometimes soft jazz humming from my little speaker. Peace didn't roar into my life. It settled like dust after a storm. One day, I got a knock on the door. I opened it and found James standing there, Milo at his side, leash slack. He looked older. Not in the hair or skin but in the eyes. I was in the area, he said. No one's ever just in the area here, I replied with a half smile. You drove 30 minutes. He chuckled. Yeah, I did. I stepped aside. Come in. He sat on the same couch he used to leap onto in muddy sneakers. Milo curled at his feet. I wanted to talk to you about something, he said after a long silence. Something I've been thinking about. I waited. He looked down at his hands. You gave me everything, Mom. College. A home. Support. Time. Love. And when you needed the smallest bit of space, we treated you like you were. In the way. I didn't interrupt. Let him feel every inch of that weight. I don't expect you to forgive us, he continued. But I wanted you to know that I've started therapy. Me and Clara both. I raised an eyebrow. Together. For now. I nodded slowly. That's good. Owning our brokenness is how we stop passing it on. He smiled sadly. You always said that. We talked a bit longer. About nothing, really. Then, as he was about to leave, he turned at the door. I don't deserve another chance with you, Mom. But I'd like one. I stepped forward, touched his cheek. Then don't waste it. Weeks turned into months. One evening, I received a letter from Naomi. Inside was the finalized paperwork. My trust had been activated, the shelter named as a beneficiary, my home protected, my legacy sealed. I held the papers close to my chest, then slid them into the drawer beneath the teacups. That night, I wrote a new page in my ledger. But this time, not for debts. For blessings. Peaceful home, trusted advisor, my name on the deed, my story. Finally mine, a future that no one else controls. The sun had dipped low behind the ocean, spilling gold into my kitchen. I poured tea, wrapped myself in my favorite shawl, and sat on the balcony as the wind kissed my hair. Below, children were playing. The smell of someone's barbecue drifted up. My bougainvillea danced wildly in the breeze. I closed my eyes and breathed it in. I am not a burden. I am not invisible. I am a woman who gave love and finally gave herself permission to receive it, too. No more shrinking. No more silence. This life, this chapter, it is mine. And it is beautiful.